Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Real Reviews podcast. Hope and pray you guys are having a good evening. Hump day. Hump days, Wednesdays today. Hopefully, you guys are not overwhelmed by work. I had a pretty easy day at work, so it was nice to have that. Anyway, so today we are going to be reviewing a film that had its debut on Netflix called Yasuke. Really dope film. And believe it or not, I deleted my notes, all the notes I took for the film. So I'm going to be flying by the seat of my pants today. Hopefully my team can carry me a little bit, but I pretty much have everything in there. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce my crew. We have Nate 2, D2, and of course, Michelle. So with that said, let's get an intro. Michelle, how are you doing today, sis?
I'm doing pretty good today. It's beautiful. Because it's Christmas time. My mom put 1,000 lights up. And happy anniversary to Alfredo and his beautiful wife. They're in Philly right now. We's gonna miss you, but have fun.
All right, awesome, awesome. You said anniversary?
Yep.
Well, happy anniversary, Alfredo. Shout out to you. Shout out to the BK Apologist and Mrs. BK Apologist. God bless you guys. Nate 2D2, man, what's going on, bro?
Hey, not much. Just glad to be here. Happy anniversary to BK and the wife. And I think your team carries you a lot of it all the time. So
A
just for
lot.
the record,
Oh, please. Okay, you guys act like I don't do anything.
You do a little bit.
Oh, okay. That's cool. That's cool. All right. So, got a great film for you guys. Let's say hello to some of the people who are here in the chat who decided to join us. Shout out to DFC Diatribe. He says, this was a short but enjoyable one, I guess. Thoughts on Samurai Champloo and Afro Samurai. But I definitely like the historical aspect of his story. Of course, some Crouching Tiger was needed for the anime fights. Absolutely. Pretty dope. First comment. So, yes, I made sure to copy your comment, DFC, because sometimes before the stream, if you put your comment on there and it starts the stream up, your comment will disappear. So I'm glad yours actually showed up, but I did copy it and paste it because I want to make sure I gave you the credit for the first comment. Shout out to the Revelator. He says, good evening, all. This is an anime I have not seen, but I do know the history of the man. I was able to see a section of a samurai museum in Kyoto that was dedicated to him. Pretty dope. As a matter of fact, if you can, since you have some of that inside info, drop some facts about the samurai that you know, about the character. I would be interested to see what you saw. Shout out to Honey Bun. She says, I'm listening in. Thank you, sis, for being here. Shout out to Warrior Woman. Thank you for being here, sis. Appreciate it. And yes, everybody obey Warrior Woman and share the stream. We are in the second to last episode of the animated season of Real Review. So make sure you guys show your support and help this channel reach its first 1,000 subscribers. We are almost at the halfway mark. We should be further along. This channel is much cooler than all those other channels out there.
Yeah, it is.
So, okay. So, got everybody there. I think we tagged everyone that I can see. Let me just make sure. All right, cool. So with that said, we're going to do like we usually do. We're going to get our general thoughts and ideas, dig into some of the details, things that stood out to us in the film. And then we are going to wrap it up with our thoughts, final, things like that. Of course, as you all know, if you are brand new to Real Reviews, what we do is we examine film through a Christian lens, checking out the morality, the human aspects, the demonic aspects, as this film definitely has a bunch of those. But it was really interesting. So anyway, that's what we do here, and we love film. So anyway, with that said, Nate 2D2, man, what are your general thoughts about the film, or the series, I should say, the 6-episode series on Netflix, Yasuke?
Well, like I always do, I got to watch this a couple times. I watched this a few weeks ago, kind of at the beginning of our season, and then I watched it again, and I'm glad I was able to rewatch all 6 episodes because, to be honest, the first time I saw it, I was a little bit disappointed. I didn't like it as much as I was hoping I would. I think I liked the idea of it, but it felt like it was, I don't know, missing a lot of, I don't know, something. And but watching it again, I think I actually liked it a lot more. I like it. I liked it a lot more. I think this story could benefit from maybe being adapted and being told like in a trilogy or something like that. 3 movies. Because it's really, I think, what, 3 hours total. This the series is
Yeah, it's about 3
what,
hours
six
because
thirty
each
minute
episode
episodes.
was about 30
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah. So I think maybe if it was like 3 parts, 92 hour kind of like movie epic quality, I think the basic story that they were able to tell, I think within this format could actually be a really good kind of epic story told within 3 movies. Because I was getting Star Wars kind of feels with it when I was rewatching it, like towards the end. Um, so yeah,
What
I think it
what
bears
aspect in
watching and rewatching.
what aspect in particular reminded you of Star Wars?
I think at the end you had the is it the daimyo, or
Oh,
I'm not saying that right.
the
Reminded me
you
kind
talk about the
of
main demon?
yeah, the main
Yeah,
demon.
the
It was
Mhm.
daimyo.
kind of Palpatine-esque to me, and
Ah,
she was trying to pit the Saki
Yasuke. Oh
and
yeah, you talking about
Yosuke
the
against each
yeah.
other. Yeah, and kind of deceiving them and things like that. So that aspect of it, and just the whole kind of journey that they have, I think, because
And the
I
two at the
mean, not
end,
necessarily
they
through.
remind me of Chewbacca and Han Solo. Now you said that.
But yeah, so there's just this epic kind of, they're on this journey, and it's not, like one to one necessarily, but things like that. And so I think, even though it's not a perfect series, and I think part of that is probably just the limitation in budget and things like that in the
Mhm.
format. It actually is, I think, a really good story, a really good idea, and a really good outline. And I kind of hope that maybe there's interest in the future to adapt this version of the person and the character into something bigger, because I think you could actually make a really good, whether it's animated or live action, maybe animated in anime, but kind of more epic. I think would be awesome in the theaters. But yeah, generally, I thought this was a really good series.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Michelle, your thoughts. I know you watched it even before we have. You said you watched it a while ago when it came out. So what are your general thoughts about it?
So my initial thoughts was it shows you how closed off the world was to one another back in those times. Um, because they seen him and it was like, are you dirty? And he was like, no, it's my skin color. They said, what? And like they were just so surprised. And I thought that was like, I don't know why that was so hilarious to me, but it just shows how like even though the world is like very open in our context, that's not the same cultural context that they came from. And also to see um I don't know, like there's themes of forgiveness, there's themes of hope, there is themes of community, themes of friendship. So I do enjoy it because it does have those themes in it. And I like that there was not just one person who would be the hero. Like there is like multiple people who contributed to the story to move it along at a better pace. I agree with Nate. I think if they would have did it as like a 3-part episode and just had them be longer and bridge those episodes together, I think it would have made a more cohesive story. But I still really, really enjoyed it.
Cool, cool. Thank you for your thoughts. For me, I really enjoyed it. And the thing is, this is one of those films where I expected to enjoy it just because the style looked cool, the art. It had Afro samurai vibes to it, which was pretty dope. Um, and I did enjoy the aspects of them showing. I agree with Michelle, and that I do think they did paint the world in a light where we're not really familiar with people being of different color. We take it for granted that we just are familiar with individuals who are different color and ethnicity, and to have that film kind of shine that light on it, I thought was interesting. And the fact that at first I thought, I'll tell you, remember when they were bathing him, he was like, oh, he should be cleaned. No man should ever be dirty or filthy. And they started bathing him. I thought they were going to wipe out the smear marks that were on his body. And because he, of course, he's dark skinned, but then he had these white streaks on his body. And I thought they were going to wipe those off. And I was like, and then when I think Oda Nobunaga came to him and said, hey, man, I thought you were cleaning him. He's like, yeah, the whole time I'm thinking, hey, you didn't get those marks off. And that's probably why. But then he mentioned the skin color. I was like, yo, I didn't even like it didn't even enter my mind, right? Because I'm so unfamiliar with people being unfamiliar with a whole different group of people. So Michelle's right, man. They did touch on that and they leaned heavily onto it, especially the robots, which is the comic relief throughout the film. The robot just kind of like went full throttle on it, but it was interesting. So for me, I truly enjoyed it. One of my favorite, I had so many notes, but one of the things that kind of stood out to me was, again, the relationship between Yasuke and Saki and how, he was standoffish, right? Didn't want to take that responsibility on. It was because of his past and what he dealt with. And if you guys haven't watched it, this series starts off full throttle running hardcore battle scenes, Japanese anime style, mega bots and samurai swords right from the beginning. But I think that's usually the best way to tell a story, to grip people in, because usually when you tell a story, you want to get their attention as fast as possible. And that's exactly what they did. They threw everything out there and then they went backwards and told the story, everything that was leading up to it, at least, and also into the past. But yeah, I truly enjoyed it. So Michelle, are there any certain parts of the series that stood out to you that you're like, we got to talk about this, we got to mention it, or it's just something that just hits you close to home and in the heart?
I will say, when he is having a conversation with, I can't remember the evil dude's name, who was his friend at first, and then they were not friends, and then when he realized that he was being used by the main demon, and he still was like wilding out when he was like talking to him, and he's trying to like show him that he doesn't have to like still follow this path. And he's like, well, I'm doing this for me, and you're still trying to make it seem like I was, taking over, but this is who I really am. And it stuck out to me because sometimes we want the best for people and we want to see the best in people, and they're never going to be that because that's not who they really are, and that's not how they see themselves. And the only way some people are going to ever be better is if they have Christ. Like some people are really just like, there's some people who um just are genuinely nice people. Like that's not going to get you to heaven or nothing, but
Hmm.
they're genuinely nice people. And some people are just genuinely just not. They just are not. And the only way they will ever change is having a true relationship with Christ. And it's like no matter how much we want better for some people are just not going to ever be better without having Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And I thought that part really stuck out to me because he was having hope that after he seen that he would come to his senses and be the person he remembered him as. And he's like, yo, I this is who I've been. Like I'm not changing just because that happened doesn't mean I'm going to be somebody different.
Yeah, and the character you're talking about, I want to make sure I'm not mixing up characters because I'm also thinking about the guy who played the Dark Samurai. Is that the?
Yeah, him.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, because
I
that.
can't remember his name because I didn't take no notes.
Yeah, the Dark Samurai that he fought at the end was a pretty interesting character because, yeah, at the beginning, he was not having it. He did not want to break tradition. He didn't want to take, and I don't think it was just the color of his skin. I think it was also the pride of keeping everything within the culture. I
Yeah,
think,
I don't think it had anything to do with that because in their conversation, it didn't seem like it had anything to do. Like even though he was like, "You'll always just be a slave," I don't think it had anything to do with that. It had more to do with because at the time was very tribal. He wasn't part of their tribe, so he should not have had any dealings within the tribe the way he was. Like as free as he was to do all the stuff he wanted to do, he wasn't Japanese, and he also wasn't part of their tribe as well. And I think that actually had more to do with it than the fact that he was a black samurai.
right. I agree. I agree. And Nate, anything stand out to you that you're like, man, we definitely got to talk about this? Anything that made an impact on you while you were watching it?
Well, there's several things, but I mean, one thing that I thought was interesting was kind of this idea of honor or their code of honor. There was in the flashbacks, there's that friend of his, or I don't know,
Hmm.
the woman. I think it was played. It sounded like it was played by Ming Na, who she was. I guess ends up being a traitor to them because she's being loyal to her own clan. And I thought that was interesting that um, despite her betraying them and pretending to be something that she's not, essentially being a spy, he still saw her as somebody who was honorable. At the end, he's saying to her brother that she died with honor, fighting for her clan, and you could see that he respects that. And it's interesting to me. I was thinking, what makes something honorable? Why would he consider something to be honorable? And he's, I think, adopting this idea of honor from the code of the samurai. I'm assuming in this culture that wasn't his, but that he's kind of been thrust into. And I think it just made me think when somebody talks about honor or what is honorable. It's like, how is that something that's objective, or is that something to them that's um based on, I don't know, I guess some subjective notion of it. How can somebody be honorable but also against you? Um, and I suppose it could be similar to somebody maybe looking at another soldier on your enemy's side, but you can still respect them for maybe fighting for their for their country, I guess, or for their own notion of what they're fighting for, or respecting their fellow soldiers, even though they're fighting against you, and things like that. But I think that aspect of it was interesting to me. And kind of jumping off that point, I think you obviously someone that Yasuke would consider not honorable is this Catholic priest. And I thought this character was interesting
Yeah.
because I'm trying to figure out, like, within the world that they're building in this series, are they saying that this guy was actually an a true believer? Are they trying to make out that his power is coming from the Christian God or the Catholic God, I guess? And it's just funny that he has all this power, and then he's coming out with he's quoting scripture, talking about serving God, and it sounds like he believes what he's preaching, and then he comes out with his holy brass knuckles later. And that whole thing was interesting, and the way that they basically make the church, or at least this representative of the church, um, to be this dishonorable character, who's, I guess, even just a minion of the daimyo. But um, it's fascinating that they make um, the one of the antagonists, I guess, to be seemingly to be the church. And so, yeah, it's just and there's a bunch of other stuff that stuck out to me too. But I think those ideas of honor and dishonor, and what makes something honorable, I think that it kind of made me think about those things. And I think it's just funny when we have these notions of these things in real life and what we talk about. And people will often argue with each other and saying, how is this honorable, how is not honorable? And it's like, well, how do you ground that? What's honorable and dishonorable? If you're what honorable in one culture might not be in another culture. And some people might think, well, you have to be honorable in the context of that culture. And then why is that honorable to honor somebody else's culture and not your own, and things like that? And so I think that's kind of the discussion I think I was having, kind of an internal dialogue as I was watching um, that aspect of it. And yeah.
Okay. There were a couple of things that stood out to me as well. One of them, of course, was the whole Catholic priest thing, which I thought was hilarious. Just the way that they introduced him. But he does reflect, I think, in society, this thing that we're used to, right? Like the false teacher, right? And he represents everything that's supposed to be unholy, but while trying to use the concept of a cross, the concept of holiness and righteousness, he had his own form of righteousness that he was trying to make or trying to impose on God himself. And he had his own agenda. And with false teachers, they do have their own agenda. Even in the world that we live in today, whether it's to get rich, whether it's to get powerful, popular, notoriety, you have false teachers out there misusing God's name and using it to become famous. And believe it or not, people do that. There's some people who do it knowingly. Then there are some people who enter into ministry with a good heart, but get captured by the fame and the notoriety that comes with just being somebody of influence. You can see that even in society today. Somebody might get on YouTube and want to do something good, and all of a sudden checks start rolling in from videos, and then they transform into something else. And that wasn't their intention at the beginning. And I think it's good for us to see that play through that character. Another character, or I should say another scene, I'll just kind of go all the way to the end, that I thought was absolutely fascinating was Yasuke's deception from the daimyo and how he started attacking Suki. And I thought that was interesting because the whole time I'm taking notes and I'm like, this is what happens when we let life, when our traumas affect us, it blinds us to what's real. And sometimes when we let's say go through a hard time in life, and he suffered, right? He lost his sensei, his master. He lost everything he ever loved. He was a very good samurai, very loyal. And he was getting lifted in the ranks. As a matter of fact, while his master was ending, he was going to make him the leader of everything. But then he lost all of that, and he ended up having to go back, in a sense, to being a servant. So all that trauma he didn't deal with. Right? He never really dealt with it. And because he didn't deal with it, Satan, or the daimyo, was able to use that trauma against him later in the future. And immediately I'm thinking, man, that happens to us every day. Even as a Christian, people who've come from different forms of life. If you don't deal with the trauma in the past, if you don't deal with those issues, Satan will use it against you, and you'll be deceived. No matter how humble and loyal you are, you can be deceived by your own hurts, by your own pains, and whatever obstacles you're trying to overcome. And that scene was just impactful to me because he was attacking the people, the girl, one thing that he loved, which was the young girl Suki. And I think a lot of that can happen as well, where individuals have this traumatized past and other people try to help them. Those people sometimes will lash out and try to hurt others, even the ones that they love, because they haven't dealt with the trauma from the past, which is why, and I think in society today, it's been built up that you need therapy. And I think some people do. I think people absolutely need therapy. But I also think that sometimes people are pushing therapy too much, right? And this is why I say that. Again, I'll make this very clear. Therapy is necessary for some people. I think it's very helpful and very beneficial. But society today, especially those on YouTube, people who don't understand psychological difficulties, are going to push therapy for financial gain. Oh, get better help. Oh, do this. Oh, do this. And I think us as Christians, yes, get therapy, but the best form of therapy you can get is faith in Christ. Because Jesus is the one who created you. He knows you better than any other human being in the world. And I think we should push Christ more than therapy. He's the one that can deal with any problem. As a matter of fact, I learned this week, I was listening to a couple of podcasts, and they were dealing with individuals who had narcissism, who were narcissistic. And come to find out, it's not you cannot receive a diagnosis of narcissists. It's like, I believe it goes along the lines of, it's more like a character trait, but not like a mental diagnosis. So anyway, they were talking about narcissism, and they were saying that nobody can help a narcissist. They said there's no therapy. And I forget the lady's name. She's very well known on YouTube for it, and she was on a podcast. She is a psychologist who specializes in narcissistic behavior, trying to help individuals who have people like that in their life. But anyway, she's saying that according to the therapeutic services, there is no way to help a narcissist. And in my head, I'm like, well, God can help a narcissist. God can help and heal a narcissist of that kind of characteristic and behavior. And that's why I say, sometimes therapy is pushed, and it should be if it's necessary and if it's able to help, but Jesus should be pushed more. so that our dark past doesn't come to our future and Satan uses it against us. Um, I'm trying to think of any other scenes stand out to you guys. You guys could just jump in, and either Nate or Michelle, or any thoughts on what I talked about.
Well, I think jumping on what you were saying about the narcissism, I think you can see an example of uh, what Christ can do to someone with another kind of disorder in David Wood, because he is a diagnosed psychopath, and from what I understand, that means that he doesn't feel guilt, and he doesn't really feel like empathy, I think. And so he doesn't, his notions of morality, like I think a lot of us, what may push us to do something or not do something is going to be because we feel bad about it, or we feel bad that we're not helping somebody when somebody in need. In him, there is no feeling that he needs to do this, or that he needs to be kind or compassionate, but he knows that this is what's right, and that's why he does it. And I mean, to me, I think it's weird because I think he's a lot more moral in my view. I mean, this is just from my mind. But I think he acts more morally than a lot of people who don't have that, I guess you could say, disability. And I think you listen to his testimony and what he's talked about his life. I think that's a prime example of what Christ can do with a broken person. So you just made me think of that when you were talking about therapy and narcissism and things like that. So I think if you look up David Wood and Why I Became a Christian, I think he delves into that. There's a whole thing where he does a testimony walking through the New York subway in one shot, and it's a pretty interesting video.
It's a pretty dope visual and great story. It's great storytelling video. I thought it was.
Yeah.
And to do it in one shot, I hope he didn't have to do retakes, because you have to walk that subway over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of goes to the point I've made about the Dark Samurai. And I was like, unless it's Christ, some people just aren't going to change. And I think David Wood is a good example of that. Like, without Christ, his moral standard is himself, and that wasn't a good deal, being a psychopath. So,
yeah, definitely. Okay, so I figured let's talk about some of the characters. I think that was the characters to me were pretty lively, pretty cool. Especially the villains who attacked the samurai Yasuke at the beginning, and then end up becoming his friends in a sense, and end up defending. I thought it was great characters. So I'll mention one relationship really quickly. The robot and the I don't know her name, but she's the one that carried, I believe it was a scythe, and she was dressed all in black. Basically, it was the scene when they had just won a period of the battle, and they were both on the wall, and then the girl gets hit by an arrow and she falls onto the ground. That was after she just said, I'm your friend. I guess I'm your friend. And the fact that the robot understood that relationship and wanted justice was, I think, interesting. It was kind of like, how they say it's a better love story than Twilight, right? That's the ongoing meme out there. But anyway, it was to me, it was a very good example of, you don't need a long story in order to build a relationship, because they didn't have a lot of screen time together, and a lot of screen time, I guess, individually, because the story centered around Yasuke. But the fact that this robot had this feeling, right? And he was one of those people that didn't almost, I'm not saying he is David Wood, but the fact that he didn't understand human emotion, well, and in the sense that he couldn't feel what the other people were feeling. He would just say whatever he wanted to say without taking anybody's feelings into consideration. And we could see that, where he kept on saying, "So you're black?" He kept on saying it during the whole fight scene, the beginning fight scene between them and Yasuke. And then he looked at the other tribal warrior that was with him, the shaman type guy. He said, "So you're not the only black guy, is it?" And he kept on just talking. He was the awkward humor of the film, but I think he also reflected, in a sense, ignorance. And I think that That character was great. But anyway, the relationship between them two I thought was pretty cool. But before I get into any other characters, Michelle, are there any characters other than the Dark Samurai that stood out to you or that you found interesting?
The little boy, I can't remember his name.
Oh yeah, he was dope.
Um, he was so
Ichiro.
yeah, him, right? He was so hilarious. Like it didn't matter what was going on. I think he also provided some much needed comic relief in some of the more serious moments. Um, but just like how easygoing he was and how much of a like he was a real kid. That's how kids actually act.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a really good job at portraying how children are so easy to forget. Like they're friends one day, not friends one day, and then in the next 15 minutes they're friends again and they're going to each other's birthday parties. And and so I think they did a really good job with him and showing him being like the normal quintessential kid.
He was really cool, but I think with him also it was a very good reflection of discipleship between him and Yasuke. And the reason being is because he had this idea of what it was to be a samurai. He had this idea, oh, I'm going to go into battles, I'm going to fight, I'm going to do and Yasuke is the seasoned samurai who has seen the pain, has seen the battles, and he pretty much crushes this young man's dreams of being a samurai or tries to. And I think in a sense that's very helpful because sometimes individuals have this idea of what it's like. Let's say somebody desires to be a pastor and they're all on fire. They're all like, yeah, I can't wait to be a pastor. And then you have this person who was a pastor for like 50 years saying, bro, you have no idea what you're asking for because he's seen, all the struggles that a pastor goes through. He's experienced it. And Yasuke kind of acts as his pastor. And I remember he says, I can't wait to go into battle, blah, blah, blah. And then he says the samurai should pray for peace. And the young boy is like, what? I want to battle, I want to fight. But he tries to ground him. But what's really good is that his enthusiasm wasn't bad. It wasn't evil for him to have that enthusiasm. Even in scripture, it says that it's a good thing for a person to desire to be a pastor, a leader, or an elder, right? But what has to be balanced with that is the idea of, well, you have to count the costs, right? And the only way to really count the costs is if you have somebody who's older actually disciple you in that area. You know what I mean? And kind of guide you and say, oh, well, did you think about this? Did you think about this? And did you count this cost? Did you count that cost? Because, there was a time where, and I don't know, but there was a time I wanted to be a pastor, right? But I need discipleship. I'm not just going to be like, oh, Pastor Ortiz here, I just started a church, because there's way too much variables that even I can't conceive of because I've never been a pastor, right? And so the whole thing is discipleship is necessary. And that young boy in Yasuke was like the pinnacle of that. And to me, it's one of those things that every time, and this is my Achilles heel when it comes to film, anytime I see discipleship or somebody training somebody, I always tell my wife, man, I wish I had that experience. You know what I mean? I always, no matter whether it's a boxing movie, whether it's an MMA movie where they're fighting and somebody's training montages, I'm like, man, I wish I had somebody to train me, or I wish I had somebody to kind of help me along in that path. Because I think all of us, to some degree, need another person to be there because we're all on different parts of that mountain. Some are higher, some are lower, but those who are higher need to reach down and pick the others up, so that way we can continue down this path. But that's what usually stands out to me with that young character. I thought he was a great reflection of somebody who had desires but didn't really know the reality and what he was asking for.
That's funny you said discipleship because when he was having a conversation with Yasuke when it was walking, I thought I thought of the Lion King when Simba was like, I just can't wait to be king. And that dude was like killing all his little hopes and dreams. Like that's actually what I thought of. And now you say like discipleship, that would make sense of why that's what came to my mind. But yeah, I was like, he's trying to be king, and now his dad about to grow off the cliff. I mean, his dad didn't, but that's what you'd have thought was about to happen the way he was harassing that poor man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any thoughts about that, Nate?
Well, I did want to say something about Ichiro, because I feel like if they were to redo this or adapt it into a bigger movie. To me, I think it would have been interesting to introduce the story through him, like through his POV, kind of like how in Star Wars we see the POV through the droids first, and we're kind of meeting our heroes through them. Because I agree with the idea that the whole epic battle scene that they have in the beginning is a good way to hook people, especially if you're going to be on Netflix and people are going to have the ability to turn off. But if it was something like in the movie theater, to me, setting up a story would be, I think, interesting. If we're watching Ichiro playing around with his, I guess they call it a boken, or his little, his fake sword or whatever, or practice sword. And he's doing his thing, and then he comes across what he calls him Yasuke, and we're meeting him that way, and we're meeting Saki that way as well. And I think that would be a great way to kind of introduce the story and be like, oh, who are these people? And we kind of meet them initially through Ichiro and through his eyes and through his kind of this young character, and kind of we can be him basically as a. Well, yeah, I mean, as the POV, I guess is again what I said, or our sort of surrogate. I don't know if that's the right word, but I think he would be a perfect character to introduce the character, the main heroes of the story through, and we kind of find out more about them as time goes along. But I think he's a fun character, and I think they didn't have a lot of time, but it did feel like he was kind of underused. It would have been interesting if he was part of their journey a little bit more, and not maybe sidelined the way he was, if they could have. But
yeah, he is a character that I did kind of expect to be more part of the film because of his tie to wanting to be a samurai. And it would be, I guess what would be dope is if they happen to want to continue the storyline, would just be the discipleship between him and Yasuke, right? Like a film just about those two characters and everything he's learned from Yasuke. And, Yasuke eventually dies, but then he becomes the samurai. And for us to have like this film to introduce him as a kid and then later on create something else, that I think would be pretty dope to just have their own singular storyline. There are a couple of quotes from the film that I think were pretty good. I don't have them because I lost my notes. But I would say this. Most of the quotes that I recorded was a lot between Yasuke and, what's his name, Ichihiro?
I think Ichiro.
Ichiro.
Yeah, between them two. Primarily the first conversation they had about him taking and saying, a samurai should pray for peace. And you're thinking, like, as a kid, you're like, that's boring. I don't want to pray. I want to swing this sword around. I want to do fantastical things. But what really pointed how immature he was, and he didn't really grasp it, was in the face of an actual battle, he ran away. You know what I mean? And then he walked into town and said, yeah, I just scared these dudes off. It's exactly what a kid would do, like Michelle was talking about earlier, and his immaturity. But I also think that kind of pointed us into this idea that he really doesn't know what he's asking for. He wants the glam and the glory that comes with being a samurai, but not the thing that kind of makes a samurai, if that makes any sense. It's kind of like if I told somebody, hey, I have a samurai sword here made in Japan, they'd be like, oh, yeah, I'll take it. But I'm like, no, you got to make one. That's different, right? Like you have to make one yourself, then most likely they're not going to want to take it. So it's kind of like that same aspect with him in that he wanted the glamour, but he didn't want to do the work, or at least he didn't know. Because at first, you know what? I'm wrong. In a sense, he did want to do the work because he kept asking Yasuke to teach him, but he didn't know exactly what that entailed as far as the details of it. So, just for everybody out there, man, you guys may want to be pastors, leaders, teachers. You may want to teach on YouTube, so forth and so on. You may want to be a foster mother. You may want to be a father, a dad. All these aspects that you're just asking for, right? That you want to do. Have you actually sat down and counted the costs? Like, what does that really entail? Or do you want what comes with that? Oh, you want to be able to say, oh, I have a son, or oh, I have this job, or what, so forth and so on. I think a lot of us need to kind of step back, count the cost, but also what the scriptures say to examine yourself, right? And examining yourself is not always saying, well, I have this problem, that problem, this problem, that problem. It's why do I have this issue? Why is this an issue? Because, like I talked about earlier, was this whole idea of um, dark your dark past or your traumas coming back to haunt you. If you don't deal with your issues, if you don't handle them face on, they are going to come back and bite you. Especially Satan out there is looking for any time, any way to grab a foothold. So, if, like for example, if you're an individual who struggles with lust, yeah, okay, yes, I can identify that I struggle with lust. But if you don't identify why you struggle with lust, you're always going to struggle, right? Like, okay, where did it begin? Why does it affect me this way? Or what impact does my lust have on other people? See, examining all those questions can really help you to fight the demons that you're facing, and that comes in all forms. Some people have an issue with money. They just want to make so much money, and they are greedy. There's some people who are gluttonous, who just eat too much. There are people who are angry all the time. There's a whole bunch of problems you can get into, and issues that we all struggle with. But if you don't answer that question on why, and then pray and ask the Lord to help you to overcome that, then, or even ask other brothers and sisters who you are close to, who you respect, and who have your best interests at heart, not people who are just going to sugarcoat things for you and make and say things that you want, but actually come face to face with individuals who are going to hold you accountable. But that they love you, so it's easier to open up to some of those people. And for some people out there who are listening, you may not have anybody to open up to, because that's a possibility. Some people just don't have those really close friends or close relationships, to which I would say, then open up to Christ. Ask Christ to bring you someone, or ask Christ himself to help you with your difficult situations, so that you don't end up like Yasuke with a hole in his back unnecessarily. And that part of the film was interesting because her tears brought him to life, and it was all cute. I knew it was going to happen, but that thing, basically, if that girl wasn't there, he would have died because of his trauma. And that's the scary part, right? We look at Yasuke as this humble, mighty, loyal warrior, but he had his own demons he was facing, and those demons ended up killing him and causing him to bring harm to someone else that he loved. And so if she didn't bring him back to life, he would have died as a result of not dealing with those previous issues. And I think a lot of us in Christ, if we don't deal with it, it could be the death of us, and it doesn't need to be. And so that's what I thought about it. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I do not.
Okay.
Great observation.
Okay. All right. So we're arriving at the end of our. What? You have something, Nate?
Yeah. I think I did want to mention. I think my favorite relationship, and this is probably obvious, but in the movie is with Yasuke and Saki. I think that's her name, right? Is it Saki or Suki?
I think
forget,
it's Suki. I could be wrong though.
Yeah, but with with the girl, because you see Yasuke, he's obviously broken in the beginning of the movie, or at least the beginning of when we're kind of following the journey. Not in
You're right.
after,
It's
after the battle.
Saki.
Is it Saki?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Saki.
and and it's at the end of the movie, he makes a point where he says that town, it was never his home, it was his retreat.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't, he was just sort of surviving. And he obviously, you could see that he was in pain. He was not having any purpose, not not being able to serve his Lord anymore, and have that his kind of honorable mission. And having I guess kind of the mission of Saki in his life gives him a different outlook. It gave him meaning. It gave him something to drive for, and it gave him someone to fight for again. And I think it was interesting that they make a point where she wasn't a helpless girl. I mean, she had powers, but they needed each other. Like when they would have all these little victories, she would say, we did it together. Like, and so that's kind of a picture of, I think, the what we have in the body of Christ, the whole idea that, what is it? The eye can't say to the ear, I don't need you, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That you cannot live out your purpose in this life, fulfill your mission, so to speak, by yourself. You need to be in community. You need somebody else, and that's how we were designed. And so he was empty until he found that purpose, with helping Saki, and working with her. And I, to me, I think they both, I mean, they both lost their family. He lost his lord, who was kind of his father. She lost her mother, not really her mother, but who was basically a
Mm-hmm.
mother, her mother. And so he becomes like a father or big brother to her. And um and I think that was just that was the part of the story that I think, that drew me, or that engaged me the most. I mean, it's funny because it made me think of Multiverse of Madness, and in a smaller way, Love and Thunder, Thor: Love and Thunder, because I think there's a similar theme of them kind of losing their family but finding each other. You have Doctor Strange and, is it
Yeah.
America Chavez, I think, and then Thor, and he finds,
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's love at the end.
Yeah.
I think that's the girl's name, and so they kind of find an adopted family. And that's, I think that focusing on that aspect and driving the story forward based on that relationship and finding that relationship. And um I think that would have been better for those movies. That would have made those movies a lot better to me. And I think that's what I liked about this series, is that they had each other. And you could see at the end that he found healing in having purpose and having, somebody to love. And I think that, that to me, that was kind of what the story was about them um, finding their meaning, finding their purpose, in the midst of their brokenness. And if they do adapt that into a movie, and I hope that's something that they would focus on, or that relationship, because I think that was that was the I think that was the most beautiful thing to me in the film, was seeing them uh find each other, especially with Yasuke being, this outsider. I guess I think it's implied that he was a slave,
Mm-hmm.
um and that's why he was in Japan. And sort of trying to find who he is. He was talking to the priest at one point with their first encounter. He says to the priest that, I think basically that he learned a while that once you're a servant, you're always a servant, and that you should just learn that. And that's what he thought his place was, just to be a
Right.
servant, just to be this kind of lower, below other people. But when he finds Saki, I think he finds a relationship where that's not the case. I mean, he's sort of her protector, but she's his protector too. And there's this equality, and that you don't have this idea of, oh, that the way of the samurai is supposed to be about, it's for Japanese men. It's just Japanese men, and nobody else, and everyone else is, a woman or a slave, can't be part of that. And that's the way of things. And it's like, no, you see that there's strength and meaning and beauty in their relationship. In just because she's a girl, just because he's an African man who had the status of a slave, it didn't have to define them. It didn't have to limit them. And um I think the idea of there's no Jew or Greek or slave master, man, woman, that's kind of the 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 verse that, or the passage that came to my mind when I saw their stories. Like they kind of exemplified that. And you see kind of finding that he's more than just a servant. He's somebody who he's I think he found his place as maybe kind of being her family, and there was a higher meaning in that, and you can kind of see that that sort of lifted him up to that lifted, I think, a burden from him, and it gave him kind of a purpose to move forward, to be a person who loves, and he isn't just a servant, he isn't just being honorable, but he's doing good. And and so that's why I like their relationship and their story the most, because I think that's the most interesting thing in the whole in his whole journey. um but yeah, I forget how I got onto that, but um yeah.
No, those are great thoughts. One more thing I wanted to say before we give our final thoughts and opinions, and then our score and our rating. There was one thing that I wanted people to capture in the show that I thought was very, very insightful, very interesting. It gives us a peek into our world a little bit, and also what I think that Yahweh, or the God of Israel, was trying to do with them as opposed to the other nations. Interestingly enough, there are pros and cons to what the main leader who made Yasuke a samurai, was it Obunaga? He talked about how accepting everyone, and everyone is a possible samurai. Everybody is able to be part of his team. That's a good thing, right? Not separating individuals, but valuing individuals. But there was this one scene when he's talking to his cohorts in that temple type area, and he says we should be allowed to love everyone that we want to. If you peek at that scene, he looks back at the young guy behind him, who I believe was his lover, because the guy, that young boy behind him, was his lover. It's almost it reminded me of the Greco-Roman times, where a king or a ruler would also have a young male as his lover on top of having a wife. And he says that. He says we should be able to love who we want, or something like that, or just carry whatever relationship we want. And then it pans and it looks at that young boy, and that young boy looks up at him. And it was one of those things that was kind of haunting, right? Because the world sometimes feels that it's okay to bring anybody in and do anything you want. I always forget the term, but there's a term that is used when, like, for example, when a church tries to, or a pastor tries to just accept every idea, thought, and belief. I can't remember the term right now.
Inclusivism, or progressive
Universal.
Christianity.
I think it might be inclusivism, universalism, but there's another word for it. But it includes those. What you guys said is that, and basically what it is that a film like this can trick you into thinking that, let's just say I'm a Christian, right? So I'm a believer in Christ. I believe in the Lord. I stand by the morals and principles that Jesus states. That does not mean that I am okay with, let's say, a Muslim coming in and bringing his belief system and trying to mix them. God was so against that, right? So when you look at, like, a lot of people who use this to say God is a racist, instead of actually looking at it for what he said it was, right? So God told the children of Israel not to mingle with the other nations, period. And people will say, well, see that? God is a racist. God only wants the children of Israel to be with the children of Israel, not understanding that he actually gives a reason for why he said that. And the reason is he did not want them to mix their pagan beliefs in with, he said, basically it says don't mingle the sons with the daughters, because your sons will go a whoring off after their idols or after their pagan deities. And so what's happening is God is trying to keep away those pagan idol worshipers, not because God is racist, but God is exclusive. God is like, you serve me and me alone. You cannot mix beliefs and do what you want and still believe that you're holy. That's not what God is about. But you can come from any one of those backgrounds. You can be saved, you can be redeemed, you can be loved by God, but you have to put those things behind you. So that's where I think that this aspect of this king, this is what happens with men's kingdom. They try to create this kind of utopia. And this utopia is, you could believe what you want, do what you want, say what you want, and we can all, just kumbaya, right? Whereas God is like, anybody can come to me. I love you all. but you need to give up the idolatry. You cannot keep all those things and think you're going to worship me. And God was strict with Israel as well. I mean, think about the two boys that went into the temple trying to burn their own incense. They got lit up because they tried to do their own thing. And this is why I think it's so important that we as Christians we draw that line in the sand. We make it clear, but we also love people who do come from different backgrounds, different belief systems, different faiths, because we all came. We was this kind of like the Chronicles of Riddick, where we all came from something else, right? And it was one of those scenes that stood out to me in that film. But we're talking about Yasuke. So Yasuke, I think in that scene, with Obunaga talking about that, it just lit my mind up. I was like, wow. This is a catch-22, because when you're first seeing this, you got all these fuzzy feelings like, man, he's a good king. He wants to bring everybody together and so forth and so on. But then you see these other aspects. Now, I don't know if that was true about the real Obunaga. This is just the character in the film. So I don't know any of the history or the historical points about that character in particular, because of course they took some liberties. We know that although Yasuke existed, he wasn't fighting robots. It's just, we know that. So I'm yeah. Yeah, but the thing is, of course, we know that's today. At that old time, okay, all right, they might have been ahead of the curve. Maybe some of their war chariots might have been looking robotic and Gundam wing type style. I don't know. But in general, that's the one thing I would say. I guess, I'll start with my final thought. That was my final thought on the film. For me, it was a great film. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I thought it should have been longer. 6 episodes to me wasn't enough to really capture what I think it was aiming for. And maybe they had, limits on their budget, maybe limits on, what they could do. And sometimes we'll look at things and say, oh, that sucked. But they probably did a lot more, but probably couldn't just because of budget reasons. But for me, if I'm going to rank the movie, man, this one's a hard one for me because I really enjoyed it, but I don't think it deserves a real high score just because of, I'm going to go with a 3.9. 3.94. I think it sits around there, only because I just thought that it could have been better. I think that the animation was great. The battle scenes with Yasuke and the other samurai, very well done. It had, it was really cool. I enjoyed it. So 3.94. I'm kind of 3.95. That might be a little bit better for me. My final thoughts. It did a great job with telling the story of discipleship. It did a great job about redemption. It did a great job when it came to character building in a very small amount of time. I think they did the best they could with that small amount of time. And yeah, so I thought it was a great film. Do I recommend it? Absolutely. I think people should watch it. You're gonna laugh quite a few times in the film. It is funny, but it also has a lot of deep themes. So 3.95 for me. Thought it was a good film. I do recommend my audience watch it. I think it's good. Michelle, what are your final thoughts and your rating for the film? Hmm. It's okay. I get to cheat because I get to pull them up while I'm talking. Right. Awesome. Awesome. I don't know if everybody heard you. Hold on a second. They said Michelle is muted. You mean to tell me Michelle's been muted this whole time, or is it just now? Hold on. Oh, okay. All right. So before we well, you know what? We'll move on to Nate. We'll come back to you, and maybe you can repeat some of your thoughts. That way, everybody can hear you. Nate, go ahead and give me your final thoughts, rating on the film, and give me enough time so I can get Michelle past it. Go for it.
Okay, yeah. Well, everyone knows I can go for a while, so um,
So many jokes.
so yeah, I'm glad that I rewatched this because I think that part of my problem was that it wasn't long enough. And so what I get from rewatching it is that I already know kind of who these characters are, and so I don't need time to get to know them. So when you're watching it, you can kind of appreciate them for who they are when you're going through their journeys. And so I think that's one of the benefits of rewatching something. You can kind of overcome maybe some hurdles in character development. So if I think it does bear rewatching if you can. Um, I will say that I had mixed feelings about the sci-fi elements of this because it sort of took me out of it. I think especially the first time I was watching it with lasers and robots, and it felt sort of like it was I don't know, shoehorned in a way to make it more interesting. I think the fantasy aspects of it worked. I mean, rewatching it, I sort of accepted it, and I like the robot character, but it did seem a little strange to have the technology within this time period of Japan. So that's one thing that was kind of weird to me. But you know, again, it's like when I was rewatching it, it's like I already knew that that was going to be part of it, so I sort of accepted it and didn't really think about it. But I think it may have been improved by not necessarily having that part and just focusing on maybe the more fantasy elements, supernatural and so forth. Um, but yeah, I think the overall idea that they actually had for this series was good. I think they, you know, if they had more of a budget, they could definitely take this basic idea of what they had and tell a really good story. I could really see it being a great like 3-part, you know, kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy. And I could see, you know, the very ending being really satisfying when they win, they beat the Daimyo and all that. And um but yeah, I would definitely recommend it. There's obviously certain worldview things in here that clash with the Christian worldview. You know, the whole idea of Christianity here is more I think they make it more something that's evil.
Hmm.
Um, at least that's what it seems like. And so I'm not co-signing that representation of Christianity, even though I'm recommending the film. I know some people will say, why are you recommending something that hates Christianity? I'm not recommending it for that. I'm not saying I like that aspect of it. Okay. But I think it is a good story and it is a good way. I think you can talk about certain things and you watch it with somebody who's not a Christian and you can be, you know, a lot of people are going to look and say, oh yeah, that's what, you know, that's what Christians are like, even if it's something that seems over the top. I mean, I think they would still say that's what Christianity is all about. I mean, it does seem like what a lot of people think the Catholic Church is about. The whole kind of, I don't know. I feel like I feel like this priest is it sounds kind of like what the Hebrew Israelites think of the Catholic Church. I feel sometimes just this it seems like this is sort of secret society kind of trying to consolidate power for the church, blah 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 kind of stuff. So so I don't co-sign any of that aspect of it. But it is interesting to see, and I think it is a good conversation starter, and you can kind of contrast and say, this is not, you know, this is not what scripture says, this is not what the church is about. But as far as my rating, you know, it's weird because it feels like it should be somewhere in the 3 range, but I think just kind of looking at what they were trying to do and the idea of the story, just based on feeling, I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. It's weird. It feels like it should be less, but I think just I feel like I appreciate what they tried to do, and I do think it was probably a budget issue, and you know, Netflix probably didn't not being able to, give the creators enough time to tell maybe the story within the scope they wanted to. But again, if you don't like it the first time, yeah, I feel like you watch it again, you might be able to appreciate it more. I did. I definitely did. I didn't. I was expecting to kind of come in here be like the black sheep and being like this wasn't that good. I don't know. I'm sorry, but I actually did like it a lot more watching it again. So yeah, I give it a solid 4 out of 5. I do hope that maybe these people are allowed to revisit it again and maybe adapt it into a larger movie, whether it's on Netflix or on the big screen. I think that would be interesting. Even I think doing something that's live action could be interesting as well. Taking this idea, I think some people are trying to do some kind of live action movie based on the actual historical figure, but I think taking this actual story itself, that the one that they wrote for Netflix, I think expanding upon that could actually be really interesting. So if anyone's watching, I would be interested in that. So you should do it.
Well, they're watching because they come on here all the time asking and looking for ideas because we have the best ideas.
Clearly, they're lurking. They're lurking in the live chat.
Oh yeah, Michelle, can you say something real quick?
Hello, Governor.
Okay, if you guys heard that, about to let her. We'll put in the chat if you guys heard her say hello, governor. If you did, I'll let her give her final thoughts. I want to make sure I give her some room and space because she had some really good thoughts and ideas.
I wouldn't say that.
All right. I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for people to put it in the chat. You can put a 1. You can say yes. You can say whatever you want. Let me see. Let's see if out of the 6 million people we have watching, let's see if one.
Papa, can you hear me, Papa?
Mama, can you hear me? All right. Honey Bun says she speaks. Michelle, give your thoughts before something weird happens. Go for it. And your rating.
Okay. One. You're servant of Christ. I'll be formal here.
You can say my government name. Didn't expect that name, but yeah.
I was trying to be formal. You took that from.
I'm sorry.
He has a video. Is God a racist? So he did bring that aspect up. I think people should watch that video. B, Nate just volunteered to be the Black Samurai because he came on and said, "Hey, I'm Asian and the Black Sheep." So I take that as Nate volunteering to be the Black Samurai. Is that what you said, Nate? That's what I heard. Yeah, he's Asian and the Black Sheep. So bam, Black Samurai. C, Nate, can we see your poster on the wall? That beautiful poster is available for sale on Teespring and everywhere Servant of Christ sells things. You can buy that poster.
That might not be available anymore. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that one was taken down, but the new ones will be up. I'm going to start making some posters specifically for Real Reviews, so you can still get other cool stuff on there.
Maybe not today, but maybe next week or 2 weeks or next year when we come back. Who knows? There'll be a poster for you to get. But there is a sweatshirt and mug and hat that Nate so beautifully models. His pretty face is everywhere promoting the merch. Love that for us. No, so my thoughts is A, Japan may have had robots because Japan has the technological advances of Wakanda. So they may have actually had robots during the time. And I stand by that statement. And when Saki was in the thing with the Dami, she's like, "Oh, look, they hate you. You're stupid." And the guy who they were looking for to teach her, he was like, "No, you're not. You're powerful and strong. You can do this." And it helped save her. If he wasn't there, I think she would have been overtaken. So the power of community is very important, and having somebody to encourage you when life is hard and it's tough and you don't know if you're going to keep going. I mess with Jordan a lot. But his videos and just like even in the background, like he's very encouraging. So I mean, I'm still gonna mess with him, so that's not gonna change. But it is good to have people who encourage you when things get rough. So that is an important aspect of the body of Christ, being a community. And I give it 4 stars. I really liked it. I don't remember anybody's names. I didn't take no notes. But I've been to Japan. I don't know if that helps or anything, but I've been to Japan. That's how I know they may have actually had robots.
Wow. So it turns out I'm the black sheep of the family because I gave it a lower score, 3.95. But
Well, Nate said he was the black sheep. He said it though. Nate said, "I'm don't try to be the black samurai now." Nate said he's the black sheep, and Nate's actually Asian. My vote is Nate be the black samurai.
that's fine. I
And
agree,
it might
Nate.
be cultural appropriation, and then people gonna be like, "Look at this, they're stealing people's culture." But I'm fine with it.
So are you like the avatar of
I'm trying to figure out how me being Asian makes me the legitimate black samurai. I'm not
Because
sure.
you said you're the black sheep.
because
and you're
Michelle
Asian.
knighted you. She did her little thing.
Yeah, you said that you're the black sheep, hence the black samurai, and you're Asian. You might not
Yeah,
be the right Asian, but
I'm
you're
not
still
I'm
Asian.
not gonna call
Wow.
myself the
Wow,
black
he's
samurai.
not the right Asian.
No, he's not the right Asian, but he's Asian, so he'll do. And he's also the black sheep.
All
Bam,
right.
black
But
and black
before
samurai.
we get any more racist,
It's not racist. It's not racist. Nate doesn't. Nate, no, I love Nate.
of course, you love us. That's why you give us a hard time.
It is. His pretty face is why I come here every.
Aw,
Oh,
you're so
yeah.
sweet. All right, guys. So I want to thank you all for being here on this Real Review episode. Next week, you got to be here. It's our last episode. We're closing off the animated series with Avatar: The Last Airbender, the first season. We're going to talk about everything that happened in the first season. Probably not every episode and every detail. We don't want a 5, 6, 9 hour stream, but we've watched, or we're going to watch, that's me. I'm halfway through the first season. We're going to watch the first season of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think you guys are going to enjoy that. I would highly suggest that you guys advertise it as much as possible. Help bring as many people to the last episode. Let's try to get to 500 subscribers between now and the last episode. I'm probably asking for a lot, but why not ask for it? Have not because we ask not, right? So
And everybody should come because there might be a surprise giveaway. Maybe you'll see if you come.
maybe, right? No promises. Don't you come and say, "Oh, I heard last time you guys were saying that you were gonna give away free shirts." No, we don't know. We'll
And
see.
nobody said a shirt. We said giveaway, so that would be assuming.
There you go. Maybe you'll get half a mug, just a handle.
Give
Okay.
yourself time to watch the first season on Netflix. They're no more than 24 minutes and there's 20 episodes. So you could actually get through it pretty quick.
Yeah, you'll knock it out pretty quick. That's why I say I saw the first 10 episodes. I saved the last 10 for between now and then so I could have something to talk about and not forget everything. Yep. So with that said, thank you all for being here. Thank you for being and joining us on the Real Reviews podcast. If you guys have any movie recommendations, any shows you want us to talk about, make sure you put it in the comments section. You can email me over at servantofchristministries@gmail.com, or you can put it in the comments section below this video. And who knows, maybe the movie you request may be the one we review. So with that said, God bless you guys. Take care, and I will see you on the next review. Peace.